First contact with fear. Dr. Sarah Chen stood motionless in the Quantum Observatory's control room, her eyes fixed on the display that showed humanity's first confirmed extraterrestrial message. After 15 years of operating the Deep Space Quantum Resonance Array, the signal's arrival felt almost anticlimactic. A simple pattern of quantum fluctuations that couldn't possibly be natural. "Run it again," she ordered, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. The holographic display pulsed with ethereal light as the message repeated itself. The quantum signatures were unmistakable, carrying information across vast distances instantaneously through quantum entanglement, technology far beyond humanity's current capabilities. The message itself was brief, encoded in mathematical principles that transcended language barriers, coordinates, a timestamp, and what could only be interpreted as a plea for help. Accompanying it was a burst of technical data that painted a horrifying picture. An entire civilization facing extinction from something they couldn't even properly describe. Within hours, the United Earth Defense Council convened an emergency session. Sarah found herself standing before the assembled leaders, explaining what they'd discovered. The signal origin is approximately 1,200 light-years from Earth, in the Carina arm of our galaxy, she explained, gesturing to the star map behind her. The civilization calling themselves the Meridiani are facing what they describe as a cosmic aberration that's consuming entire star systems. Admiral James Okonjo, the Council's military chairman, leaned forward. "Doctor, you're certain this isn't a hoax, or worse, a trap?" Sarah shook her head. "The quantum transmission method alone proves they're far more advanced than us. If they wanted to destroy us, they wouldn't need to lure us anywhere. Yet they're asking for our help," commented Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the Council's chief xenobiologist. "Why us? We're barely able to reach our neighboring star systems." "Because we're the only ones who answered," Sarah replied softly. "According to the data they sent, they've been broadcasting this message across the galaxy for what we'd measure as 50 years. No other civilization has responded." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, despite being one of the youngest spacefaring races, might be the Meridiani's last hope. Admiral Okonjo straightened in his chair. "What exactly are they asking for?" Sarah brought up another hologram, this one showing technical specifications. "They need ships, specifically ships capable of approaching what they call the darkness between realities. Our quantum drive technology, while primitive compared to theirs, operates on principles they think might be able to resist the aberration's effects." "And what if we refuse?" someone asked from the back of the chamber. Sarah's expression hardened. "Then we'll have to live with knowing we stood by and watched an entire civilization die. But more than that, whatever this threat is, it's spreading. If it's not stopped at the Meridiani borders, it could eventually reach us." The council debated for hours. Sarah stood patiently, answering questions about the technical data, the possible risks, the resources required. Finally, Admiral Okonjo called for a vote. "The motion to launch a rescue mission to the Meridiani civilization passes," he announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. "Dr. Chen, you'll be going with them. We'll need your expertise on the quantum communications." The next 3 months passed in a blur of preparation. The UES Hyperion, Earth's newest quantum drive vessel, was retrofitted according to the Meridiani specifications. A crew of 250 was assembled. The best pilots, engineers, scientists, and soldiers Earth had to offer. Sarah spent countless hours in the ship's quantum lab, studying the Meridiani data and trying to understand what they might be facing. Captain Maya Rodriguez, the Hyperion's commanding officer, found Sarah there the night before launch, surrounded by holographic projections of quantum wave functions. "You should get some rest, Doctor," she said, her voice carrying the warm but firm tone of someone used to being obeyed. Sarah smiled wearily. "Just trying to make sure we're not missing anything. The Meridiani data, there's something about it that bothers me. Their descriptions of the aberration are almost contradictory. It's like they're trying to describe something their minds can't quite process. Maya leaned against a console, studying the projections. Maybe that's exactly what's happening. We're about to encounter something completely outside our realm of experience. But that's what humanity does best, isn't it? We face the unknown. We adapt. We survive. And hopefully we help others survive too, Sarah added softly. The launch ceremony the next morning was brief but powerful. As the Hyperion rose through Earth's atmosphere, Sarah watched her home planet shrink away on the view screen. They were about to attempt humanity's first long-range quantum jump, crossing a distance that would take conventional ships thousands of years to traverse. "Quantum drive spooling up," announced Lieutenant Park from the engineering station. "Meridiani coordinates locked in. Jump calculations complete." Captain Rodriguez looked around the bridge, meeting each crew member's eyes in turn. "Whatever we find out there, remember, we're making history. We're proving that humanity isn't just another species looking out for itself. We're showing the galaxy that when someone calls for help, Earth answers." She turned to the helm. "Initiate quantum jump." The Hyperion shuddered as reality itself seemed to fold around them. Through the quantum lab sensors, Sarah watched in fascination as the ship's quantum state became entangled with their destination point, effectively tunneling through space-time itself. The jump lasted both an instant and an eternity. When reality reasserted itself, they found themselves in a star system that immediately set off every alarm on the ship. The local space was riddled with quantum distortions, twisting light in ways that shouldn't be possible. And in the distance, barely visible against the system's blue-white sun, they saw their first glimpse of the Meridiani, a massive structure that seemed to be built from crystalline energy rather than matter. "Multiple contacts approaching," announced the tactical officer. "Meridiani vessels, according to the recognition protocols they sent us. They're broadcasting on the quantum band." Sarah worked quickly at her station, decoding the transmission. The message that came through was both welcoming and desperate. "Humans of Earth, you have our eternal gratitude for answering our call. But you must hurry. The aberration has reached our inner system. We have less than 30 hours before it consumes everything." Captain Rodriguez straightened in her chair. "Send them our response. We came to help. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Request immediate tactical data on the threat." As the Meridiani data began streaming in, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The sensor readings were impossible. Space itself was being unmade at the quantum level, reality unraveling like a poorly woven fabric. The aberration wasn't just destroying the Meridiani, it was erasing them from existence itself. Humanity's first major interstellar rescue mission had begun. But as Sarah studied the incoming data, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were facing something far more fundamental than a simple cosmic threat. They were about to confront the very nature of reality itself, and their actions in the next 30 hours would determine not just the fate of the Meridiani, but possibly the future of existence itself. The quantum sensors pulsed with increasing urgency, and Sarah knew that somewhere out there, in the darkness between realities, something impossible was waiting for them. The real question was, would humanity's determination and ingenuity be enough to face it? The price of courage. The Meridiani home system stretched before the UES Hyperion like a fractured painting, reality itself distorting around the edges of normal space. Through the quantum lab's instruments, Sarah Chen watched in horrified fascination as entire orbits warped and twisted, defying the fundamental laws of physics. Their sun shouldn't be able to maintain fusion under these conditions, she muttered, reviewing the sensor data. The quantum disruption should have torn it apart hours ago. "We're maintaining it artificially," came a voice that seemed to resonate directly in her mind. Sarah turned to face the Meridiani ambassador, a being of crystalline energy that had taken up residence in the lab. They called themselves Nexus, explaining that individual names were a foreign concept to their species. The Meridiani existed as a collective consciousness, their bodies mere vessels of pure energy. their technology, their civilization, even their method of communication. All of it operated on principles that made Sarah's head spin. Yet here they were, facing extinction from something even they couldn't comprehend. "Show me again what happens at the moment of contact," Sarah requested, pulling up the recordings of previous encounters with the aberration. The holographic display filled with images that seemed to refuse to resolve into coherent shapes, like trying to remember a dream that kept slipping away. "Your mind shields itself from the full reality," Nexus explained, their crystalline form pulsing with what Sarah had learned to recognize as concern. "Even we cannot perceive it directly without losing coherence. It exists in what you might call the spaces between spaces, the quantum foam beneath reality itself." On the bridge, Captain Rodriguez was facing her own challenges. The Hyperion's quantum drive had been modified according to Meridiani specifications, theoretically allowing them to operate in the distorted space around the aberration. But theory and practice were proving to be very different things. "Status report," she demanded, watching as another sensor probe disappeared into the wavefront of distorted space. Lieutenant Park's fingers flew over his engineering console. "Quantum field integrity holding at 82%. The Meridiani modifications are working, but we're seeing microfractures in the containment matrix. If we get any closer to that thing, I can't guarantee we'll be able to maintain quantum coherence." "Keep at it," Maya ordered, turning to the tactical display where the aberration's advance was clearly visible. It moved like liquid darkness, consuming space itself, leaving behind nothing but quantum static, areas where reality simply ceased to exist. The Meridiani fleet, what remained of it, had positioned itself in a complex geometric pattern around their homeworld. Their energy vessels pulsed in harmony, generating a quantum field that barely kept the aberration at bay. But Sarah's calculations showed they had less than 20 hours before their strength failed. "We need to understand what we're actually fighting," Maya said during the emergency briefing. "Dr. Chen, what have you and our guest discovered?" Sarah stood, projecting her findings. "The aberration isn't just destroying things, it's unwriting them from existence. It's like, imagine reality is a book, and this thing is an eraser, removing not just the words but the paper they're written on. The Meridiani have been fighting it by essentially trying to rewrite reality faster than it can be erased, but they're losing ground. How do you fight something that unmakes reality?" Commander James Liu, the tactical officer, asked what everyone was thinking. "Maybe we don't," Sarah replied, her mind racing with an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal. "The Meridiani exist as energy, as consciousness. They've been trying to fight this thing on a physical level, but what if that's the wrong approach? Our quantum drive doesn't just move us through space. It temporarily shifts our quantum state outside normal spacetime." Understanding dawned in Maya's eyes. "You want to take the ship into the aberration itself?" "Not exactly," Sarah explained, bringing up a complex quantum diagram. "The Meridiani can exist as pure consciousness, pure energy. Our quantum drive technology, while primitive compared to theirs, operates on different principles. If we can modify the drive to generate a quantum bubble that exists partially outside normal space, we could create a safe zone." Nexus interjected, their form brightening with excitement, a pocket of defined reality within the undefined. But the energy requirements would be enormous. Maya studied the projections. "How enormous are we talking about?" "We'd need to channel the entire output of your sun," Nexus replied. "The effort would destroy it, but it might give us enough power to establish a foothold within the aberration itself." The briefing room erupted in argument. Sacrificing their sun meant the end of the Meridiani civilization as they knew it. They would become a homeless species, existing only as energy beings in whatever safe zone the humans could create. But the alternative was complete erasure from existence. "There's something else," Sarah added quietly, waiting for the room to fall silent. "The quantum calculations, they suggest this isn't a natural phenomenon. The patterns within the chaos, they're too structured. This aberration might be artificial, created by something operating on levels of reality we can barely comprehend. Maya absorbed this information, her expression hardening with determination. So we're not just fighting for survival. We're dealing with an attack, possibly from a civilization that exists outside our understanding of reality itself. Which means they might be able to be reasoned with, Sarah concluded. If we can establish a stable zone within the aberration, if we can find a way to communicate. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. The Meridiani began the complex process of channeling their sun's energy, while the Hyperion's engineers worked frantically to modify the quantum drive according to Sarah's specifications. They would only get one chance at this. Either it would work, or they would join the growing void of unspace surrounding them. As Sarah worked, she couldn't help but reflect on the irony. Humanity, one of the youngest spacefaring races, was about to attempt something that ancient, hyper-advanced civilizations had deemed impossible, not because they had superior technology or understanding, but because they were willing to try when everyone else had given up. The quantum sensors began screaming as the aberration accelerated its advance, as if sensing their intentions. Sarah watched through the lab's windows as the Meridiani sun began to pulse with impossible energies, its corona writhing with quantum distortions. They were about to attempt the impossible, creating a bubble of defined reality within a zone of pure quantum uncertainty, all while trying to communicate with beings that might exist outside the boundaries of existence itself. All stations report ready. Maya's voice came over the comm. Dr. Chen, Nexus, it's time. Let's show this universe that humanity doesn't just answer calls for help. We solve problems that no one else can solve. As the Hyperion's modified quantum drive spooled up, Sarah felt a moment of pure clarity. Whether they succeeded or failed, this moment would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. They were about to prove that courage and determination could overcome even the most fundamental laws of reality itself. Understanding the impossible, the universe bent around the UES Hyperion as it pierced the boundary between defined space and the quantum aberration. Sarah Chen's modified quantum drive screamed in protest, generating field harmonics that shouldn't have been possible in normal space. Through the viewport, reality itself seemed to fragment, splitting into countless possible states of existence. Field integrity at 64% and dropping. Lieutenant Park reported, his voice tight with tension. The Meridiani energy feed is stable, but we're losing coherence faster than expected. Captain Rodriguez gripped her command chair as another wave of quantum distortion washed over the ship. Dr. Chen, talk to me. What are we seeing? Sarah's fingers danced across her console, interpreting data that defied conventional physics. It's incredible. The aberration isn't destroying reality. It's rewriting it. These patterns, they're not random. They're like someone's editing the source code of the universe itself. The Meridiani sun pulsed behind them, its energy being channeled through their crystalline fleet in ways that violated every law of thermodynamics. Nexus hovered near Sarah's station, their crystalline form flickering with strain as they helped interpret the impossible readings. There, Sarah suddenly exclaimed, highlighting a section of quantum data. Do you see it? These fluctuations, they're repeating. Not randomly, but in a structured way. Almost like language, Nexus finished, their form brightening with realization. But not any form of communication we've encountered before. It operates on the quantum level itself, manipulating the fundamental forces of reality. Maya leaned forward, studying the patterns. Can we respond? Use the quantum drive to send a message back. Maybe, Sarah replied, her mind racing with possibilities. The drive wasn't designed for this, but if we modulate the field harmonics just right. She paused, a thought striking her. Wait, what if we're thinking about this wrong? We're trying to communicate using quantum mechanics, but what if that's like trying to write a letter by manipulating individual atoms? Explain, Maya demanded, recognizing the look that meant Sarah was onto something. The Meridiani exist as energy, As consciousness, Sarah began, gesturing excitedly. They've been fighting this thing on a quantum level because that's how they interact with reality. But humans, we're different. We experience reality through matter, through classical physics. What if that's why we're seeing patterns they couldn't? We're looking at it from a completely different perspective. Commander Liu spoke up from tactical. Like being so close to something you can't see the whole picture. Exactly. Sarah turned to Nexus. Your civilization evolved to manipulate energy and quantum states directly. You see reality at its most fundamental level. But humans, we're messy. We're made of matter. We think in classical terms. We see the forest instead of the quantum trees. Nexus's form pulsed thoughtfully. This is why you answered our call when no one else would. Other civilizations advanced enough to receive our message would have approached the problem as we did, trying to fight quantum with quantum. But what good does understanding do us if we can't communicate back? Maya asked, ever focused on the practical. Sarah smiled, the kind of smile that usually preceded either a breakthrough or a catastrophe. We already are communicating. Every adjustment we make to the quantum drive, every attempt to maintain our bubble of reality. It's changing the patterns around us. Look. She highlighted new data streams showing how the aberration's behavior had shifted, becoming less aggressive, more curious. The void of unspace around them seemed to pulse with a different rhythm now, less like an eraser destroying reality, and more like a child experimenting with new toys. It's studying us, Maya realized, learning from how we respond. Yes, but there's more. Sarah's hands flew over her console. The quantum drive. It's not just protecting us. It's acting as a translator. Every time we adjust it to compensate for the aberration's effects, we're essentially speaking its language. Not through quantum manipulation like the Meridiani tried, but through cause and effect, action and reaction. Can you use that? Maya asked. Find a way to actually communicate. Sarah exchanged looks with Nexus. Maybe. But we'll need to take a risk. A big one. She pulled up new calculations. If we deliberately destabilize the quantum field in a controlled way. You want to lower our shields. Commander Liu interrupted, alarmed. Not lower them. Modulate them. Like using our bubble of reality as a voice box, letting us speak in the language of quantum manipulation, but with human intuition behind it. Maya studied the projections, her expression grave. The strain on the drive would be enormous. We might not be able to maintain the field. We definitely won't be able to maintain it long-term anyway, Sarah countered. Our current approach is like trying to hold back the ocean with a wall. But if we can communicate, if we can understand what this thing actually is. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Field integrity at 47%, Park reported. We need to make a decision soon, Captain. Maya stood, surveying her bridge crew. Each face showed fear mixed with determination, the very human combination that had brought them 1,200 light-years to help an alien civilization. Dr. Chen, do it. But be ready to restore full field strength the moment I give the word. Sarah nodded, her fingers positioning over her console. Nexus, I'll need your help modulating the energy feed from your sun. The crystalline being pulsed in agreement. Beginning field modulation in 3, 2, 1. Reality flickered around them as Sarah carefully weakened their quantum bubble in specific ways, creating patterns in the very fabric of space-time. It was like learning to speak by manipulating gravity itself, writing words in the darkness between moments of existence. At first, there was no response. The aberration continued its chaotic dance around their bubble of normal space. Then, slowly, the patterns began to change. The quantum static organized itself, forming structures that mirrored their own manipulations. It's working, Sarah whispered, watching as the void itself seemed to reach up to them. It's trying to communicate back. Through the viewport, the crew watched in awe as the unspace around them transformed. The destructive void became something else, A canvas of quantum possibilities, each fluctuation a letter in an alphabet they were only beginning to understand. They had made first contact not just with another civilization, but with beings that existed in the quantum foam beneath reality itself. Now they just had to hope they could understand each other before their tenuous grip on existence failed completely. As Sarah worked to interpret the emerging patterns, she couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's greatest contribution to this crisis wasn't their technology or their quantum understanding. It was their ability to think outside the quantum box, to approach an impossible problem from an entirely new angle. The universe, it seemed, still had much to teach them, and humanity, young and brash as they were, had something to teach it in return. The human solution. The bridge of the UES Hyperion had become a symphony of alarms as multiple systems approached their breaking point. Through the quantum distortions, Sarah Chen worked frantically to decode the patterns emerging from the void, each new revelation both fascinating and terrifying. Field integrity at 31%, Lieutenant Park announced, his voice strained. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. The patterns they were receiving had evolved from simple mimicry into something far more complex. The quantum beings, as they had begun calling them, weren't just communicating. They were sharing their story. Sarah watched in amazement as mathematical concepts beyond human comprehension resolved themselves into something almost like memories. They're not destroyers, she breathed, understanding finally dawning. They're archaeologists. Captain Rodriguez turned sharply. Explain. The quantum patterns, they're not random, and they're not attacks. They're searching. Sarah pulled up a complex visualization. These beings exist in what we'd call quantum superposition, able to perceive and manipulate all possible states of reality simultaneously. To them, our universe is like a fossil, a remnant of some ancient state of existence they're trying to understand. Nexus's crystalline form pulsed with sudden comprehension. They do not understand that their investigation destroys the very thing they study. Just as your primitive atomic microscopes once destroyed the particles they attempted to observe. Exactly. Sarah's fingers flew across her console. They're not malevolent. They literally can't perceive reality the way we do. When they examine something, they collapse all its quantum states simultaneously, trying to understand it from every possible angle at once. Understanding is great, Maya replied, gripping her chair as another wave of distortion rocked the ship. But how does this help us stop them from examining the entire galaxy out of existence? Sarah shared a look with Nexus, an idea forming between human intuition and Meridiani knowledge. What if we could show them, help them understand that their method of observation is destructive? She paused, considering. Better yet, what if we could teach them how to observe without destroying? How? Commander Liu asked. We can barely maintain this bubble of normal space, let alone teach quantum beings about conservation of reality. By giving them something they've never seen before, Sarah replied, her excitement building. The Meridiani exist as pure energy, consciousness without matter. The quantum beings exist in superposition, all possibilities at once. But humans, we're something entirely different. We're consciousness emerging from matter, quantum effects giving rise to classical reality. And how exactly do we show them that? Maya asked, but her tone suggested she was already following Sarah's logic. Sarah grinned. We invite them in. Not into our space, but into our minds. The bridge fell silent save for the constant wail of stressed systems. Dr. Chen, Maya said carefully, are you suggesting we let these beings that unravel reality into our heads? Not exactly. More like, Sarah gestured to Nexus. The Meridiani can exist as pure consciousness. Their technology allows them to transfer and maintain awareness outside of their energy forms. What if we use that same technology, combined with our quantum field, to create a shared space, a way for all three of our species to perceive each other as we truly are? Nexus vibrated with excitement. Yes, it could work. We could use the remaining energy from our sun to create a quantum consciousness interface. But they hesitated. The process would be dangerous. No matter-based life form has ever attempted to transfer consciousness this way. Of course it's dangerous, Sarah replied with a very human smile. Everything about this mission has been dangerous, but it's better than watching reality itself be unwound by overly curious quantum archaeologists. Maya stood, her decision made. What do you need? The next hour was a blur of preparation. The Meridiani fleet channeled the last reserves of their solar energy into the Hyperion's modified quantum drive, while Sarah and Nexus worked to adapt their consciousness transfer technology for human minds. The quantum beings are still trying to communicate, Sarah reported as they worked. The patterns are becoming more focused, more deliberate. I think they sense what we're attempting. Are you sure about this? Maya asked softly, watching as her crew prepared for what could be the most ambitious first contact in human history. Sarah checked the final calibrations. Honestly, no. But look at what we've already accomplished. We're thousands of light years from Earth, maintaining a bubble of reality inside quantum chaos, working with energy beings to communicate with quantum archaeologists. Sure left the building a long time ago. Field integrity at 23%, Park announced. We're running out of time. Sarah turned to the bridge crew. We only need 3 volunteers. The consciousness transfer system can't handle more than that safely. She didn't need to add that safely was a relative term in this situation. Maya stepped forward first, surprising no one. I'm in. Commander Liu joined her. Someone needs to represent our military perspective. Make sure we don't accidentally start a war with quantum space gods. The third volunteer was Park himself. The quantum drive is my baby. If anyone's going to help translate its effects into consciousness, it should be me. Sarah nodded, trying to hide her relief that she had exactly the team she'd hoped for. Nexus will act as our anchor, helping maintain the connection between all states of consciousness. I'll monitor from here and make sure the transfer remains stable. The volunteers took their positions in hastily modified crew pods, each connected to the quantum drive through a web of Meridiani technology that glowed with impossible energies. Sarah checked the final connections, then took her position at the control console. Remember, she instructed, once the transfer begins, you'll experience reality as the quantum beings do. All possibilities simultaneously. Don't fight it. Let your human consciousness be the bridge between quantum and classical states. Show them who we are, how we think, how we observe reality without destroying it. Maya managed a tight smile. Just another day at the office, right? Sarah initiated the transfer sequence. The quantum drive hummed with new harmonics as Meridiani energy merged with human technology. Through the viewport, the void of unspace seemed to pause, as if the quantum beings were watching with their own form of anticipation. Transfer beginning in 3, 2, 1. Reality itself held its breath as human consciousness prepared to merge with beings that existed beyond the very concept of existence. The fate of 2 civilizations, and possibly the entire concept of classical reality, hung in the balance, and humanity, young and barely spacefaring, was about to attempt something that no species had ever dreamed possible: teaching quantum gods how to observe without destroying. The quantum drive pulsed once, twice, and then the transfer began. The universe would never be the same. Legacy of 2 worlds. In the quantum interface chamber aboard the UES Hyperion, 3 human minds crossed the boundary between classical and quantum reality. Captain Maya Rodriguez, Commander Liu, and Lieutenant Park experienced what no human consciousness was meant to comprehend: existence in all states simultaneously, every possibility occurring at once in an eternal moment. Sarah Chen watched through the ship's sensors as the quantum beings responded. The void of unspace around them transformed, shifting from chaos into patterns of impossible complexity. Through it all, Nexus maintained the delicate bridge between states of being, their crystalline form pulsing with strain. Neural patterns stable, Sarah reported, though her instruments could barely track what was happening. Quantum resonance increasing. There, connecting. Inside the interface, Maya experienced reality as the quantum beings did. Every moment was all moments. Every possibility existed simultaneously. She saw the history of the universe not as a linear progression, but as a vast tapestry of interconnected states. The quantum beings' purpose became clear. They were explorers of possibility itself, searching through the quantum foam of reality for patterns they had never encountered before. And in humanity, they found something unprecedented. Through the merged consciousness, Maya shared the human experience, the emergence of order from chaos, of clear thought from quantum uncertainty, of decisive action from infinite possibility. She showed them how humans made choices, collapsed quantum states into classical reality through the very act of observation and decision. Commander Liu contributed the strategic perspective, demonstrating how humans could plan and act while acknowledging uncertainty. His military training, translated into quantum concepts, showed how limitation could breed creativity, how the necessity of choice could lead to innovation. Park's engineering mindset provided the framework, showing how humans built order from chaos, created technology that bridged the gap between quantum and classical physics. Through him, the quantum beings began to understand how their observations affected the reality they studied. Field integrity at 17%, the ship's computer warned. The strain of maintaining the quantum interface was pushing their systems beyond their limits. Sarah watched in fascination as new patterns emerged in the quantum void. The beings were learning, adapting their method of observation. Instead of collapsing all quantum states simultaneously, they began to observe more selectively, learning from humanity's example of how to interact with classical reality without destroying it. Through their shared consciousness, Maya felt the quantum beings' revelation. They had never encountered a species that naturally existed at the boundary between quantum and classical states. Humans were neither pure energy like the Meridiani nor quantum entities like themselves. Instead, humanity represented something unique, a bridge between states of reality. The field is stabilizing, Sarah announced suddenly. The quantum disruption it's reorganizing itself. Around the Hyperion, the void of unspace transformed. Instead of erasing reality, it began to preserve it, creating protected pockets where quantum and classical physics could coexist. The quantum beings had learned from humanity's example, discovering how to study without destroying. The Meridiani sun, nearly exhausted from powering their desperate plan, pulsed with renewed energy as the quantum beings applied their new understanding. They didn't just halt the destruction. They began to restore what was lost, rebuilding reality state by state. They're rewriting it all back into existence, Sarah whispered in awe. Everything they erased, they're bringing it back. In the quantum interface, Maya shared humanity's final lesson, the power of choice, of deciding which possibilities to make real. The quantum beings, existing in all states simultaneously, had never understood the beauty of limitation, of selecting one path from many. The interface began to overload as the human minds reached their limit. Sarah initiated the extraction sequence, carefully pulling her crewmates back from the quantum state. As their consciousness returned to classical reality, the quantum beings shared one final message, not in mathematics or quantum patterns, but in clear human concepts. We understand now. Reality is not just states of existence, it is the choices made between them. You have taught us how to observe without destroying, how to learn without unmaking. We will remember. The void of unspace receded, leaving behind a transformed region of space. The Meridiani system was restored, their sun stabilized, their civilization preserved. But they were no longer alone. The quantum beings remained, not as destroyers but as custodians, maintaining the delicate balance between quantum and classical reality. As the volunteer team recovered, Sarah compiled their sensor readings, knowing that the scientific implications of what they'd achieved would keep humanity's researchers busy for generations. They had not only saved a civilization, They had fundamentally changed how different forms of consciousness could interact with reality itself. "Well," Maya said weakly, still adjusting to the limitations of classical existence, "I guess we showed them why answering distress calls is important." The bridge crew laughed, the tension of their ordeal finally breaking. They had faced the impossible and emerged not just successful, but transformative. Humanity's first major intervention in galactic affairs had led to something unprecedented, a bridge between fundamentally different states of existence. The Meridiani, their civilization saved, offered humanity full access to their technology and knowledge. The quantum beings, having learned the value of limited perspective, became guardians of the boundary between states of reality. And humanity, barely out of its cosmic cradle, had proven that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their understanding of physics, but their unique ability to bridge gaps between seemingly incompatible forms of existence. As the Hyperion prepared for its return journey to Earth, Sarah found Maya on the observation deck, watching the restored Meridiani sun pulse with healthy light. "You know what this means for humanity, don't you?" Sarah asked. Maya nodded. "We're not just part of the galactic community now. We're essential to it, not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we're the best at figuring out how different kinds of minds can work together," Sarah finished, "even when those minds exist in completely different states of reality." The quantum beings had left them with one final gift, the ability to generate stable quantum interfaces, allowing future communication between all three forms of consciousness. Humanity would serve as translators, mediators, and bridges between the quantum and classical aspects of the universe. As they watched the Meridiani system fade behind them, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. Humanity had answered a desperate call for help, and, in doing so, had discovered their unique place in the cosmos. They were the ones who could understand both the quantum and the classical, the possible and the actual, the infinite and the limited. In the end, that understanding had not only saved a civilization, it had transformed their understanding of reality itself. Not bad for humanity's first major step onto the galactic stage. The universe, vast and mysterious as it was, had just become a little bit smaller and infinitely more interesting.